All right, gang, we're back. No Name Cinema Society. It's our second episode of the evening. It's time for our Indie Spotlight. We're about, well, either 9 or 39 minutes late, depending on how you look at it. And tonight we're here to talk about Win-Win from 2011. We've been doing 2011 Indies. Hello, my name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts for the evening. Let me now introduce you to your other hosts. Two guys who used to wrestle each other in their dorm rooms at Final Four finalist Syracuse. Here is Giamatti.
That's true. I used to pin Davy Joe every day. Every day.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Davy Joe, how did it feel to be under his armpits like that?
Wow. All right. Hey, you know what? You just reminded me of this Sunday in Texas also, WrestleMania. Big weekend. Big weekend.
Yeah, David, if you didn't see our first episode when we talked about Allegiant, we announced that Davy Joe is going to the Final Four to see his alma mater, Syracuse. Giamatti here was a wrestler, but he's not familiar with what a basketball is, let alone knowing that his own school is in the Final Four for the first time since 2003. Isn't that right? 2003, Davy Joe?
No, they were in it. Well, they won in 2003. They were in it in 2011.
They were in it 2011. I do not remember that.
In Atlanta, I was there. Yeah.
You were there too. Die-hard fan, guys.
I was
all right. So, if you've been following, you know that once the calendar turned to 2016, we started doing indies from 2011, including Shame, and the last one we talked about was The Conspirator. So this is the next 2011 indie that I'm going to be recommending. The trivia, if you followed from the last time or on Facebook, was that this indie was written and directed by one of this year's Best Director Oscar nominees, and in fact his film was the film. He didn't win Best Director, but his film won Best Picture in a surprise win for Tom McCarthy, who is the director of tonight's film. Now, the trivia question for you guys, and maybe mainly for Davy Joe, because I already sent the photos to Giamatti, is can you name the film that Tom McCarthy directed in between Win-Win and Spotlight? There's one film he made in between the two.
Was it The Cobbler?
It was The Cobbler. Look at you. You do your Tom McCarthy research in advance. That's very exciting. Now, the other thing I wanted to let you guys know about Tom McCarthy is, the other tidbit is that he was also, at one point, I did meet him once, and I met with him, possibly playing, because he also started as an actor, and shortly after he made The Station Agent, he was still acting, and we talked about maybe him playing the lead role in my film Homecoming.
Oh, wow.
Instead, he went on to make, shortly after, he was working on The Visitor, and he had a chance to make his film The Visitor, and so that didn't come to pass. But you know, we did have a nice little, that was a possibility of happening at one point. Anyway, what's that?
Is he a nice guy?
Yeah. He had some notes in the script I didn't love, but that's beside the point. Let's start talking about Win-Win. So, down on his luck, small-town lawyer guy here, Paul Giamatti, and he's a high school wrestling coach. He comes across down on his luck runaway teen Kyle, who hopefully you guys remember from We Are Your Friends, a movie we talked about last year. The intersection of their journeys turns out to have mutual benefits, as Kyle may have found the happy home he's been lacking, while Mike may have found his first star wrestler. So, guys, this it feels like I always rewatch these films for the show, and although because we postponed it a week and all this other stuff, I feel like I watched years ago now. But rewatching it recently, I couldn't help but feel happy afterwards, and then and that enjoyment discovered. And I was trying to ascertain what made it feel so good. There's a couple things. I think for me, as my recommendation, I feel like the characters and situations, without being overly depressing and heavy, which indie films can tend to do. I think it's funny, but it's still heartfelt. I also, one of the strengths, I think it moves at a really brisk pace. And it has some of my favorite actors, including Paul Giamatti, Amy Ryan, Bobby Cannavale, and are big favorites of mine. So those are my thoughts. That's why I'm recommending the film. I'm going to let Giamatti go first again. What do you got, Giamatti?
Opening thoughts. I liked it. I didn't. Look, I'm just gonna leave it there. I liked it, and let's go on.
that's yeah. It sounds more complicated than that, and well, I guess we'll get into that. Davy Joe.
I liked it, but it kind of, guys, it stressed me out. I liked it though. It's a good movie.
All right, well let's start by unpacking that because I'm more curious about that. How did it stress you out?
It's just this impending feeling of utter doom for Paul Giamatti. Just like, oh my God.
Now, do you think that's a Paul Giamatti persona thing and nothing to do with the actual script itself?
No, I think it had everything to do with the script. All
right, so can you define that more?
Sure. The man is going to be disbarred. As
a lawyer, so that you felt that pain.
You felt that pain.
I mean, just really, really bad. And they.
I actually have a section here to talk about legal issues towards the end. So maybe let's save that aspect of it.
That's fine.
Let's talk about one thing that struck me about the film was its tone, and I sort of hinted at it a little bit when I made the recommendation, my notes on the recommendation, is it's sort of like it's serious, but it's also very light. Like it feels very light. I feel like it goes down very easy, but I don't think it ever feels disingenuous like many comedies might, or heightened in any way. With that said, like, what do you guys feel about that? Am I off base, or what do you think?
Well, first off, do you consider this a comedy?
Well, I mean, like, that's a great question. I mean, like, I laughed several times. Yeah, I think it's very funny. And I mean, like, a lot of the comedy comes from Bobby Cannavale and Jeffrey Tambor, like these sort of like quote unquote comic relief type characters. I would also say that, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a moment when I teared up a little bit too. So this is the thing. One of the things I like about it. Yeah, I do think that there are very funny elements. I would maybe call it a dramedy or a serio comedy, maybe. I hear you're saying, and that's why is one of the first things I brought up, because I do think I like the tone. I like the sort of middle ground that it plays, because it feels more lifelike to me almost. Davey, I see you nodding, so I'm gonna cut to you because I like it when someone agrees with me. Dramedy
sounds good. I'd say it's definitely a drama with some comic elements, but it's legitimately funny at times.
Do you disagree with that assessment, J Money?
No, I think that there's definitely a lot of comedy in this. I just don't think I would classify it necessarily as a comedy in and of itself. I think that and I haven't seen everything that Tom McCarthy's done. Obviously, I've only seen The Station Agent, and I've seen this, and I've seen Spotlight. But at least based on those three things, I think that Tom McCarthy has this wonderful way of sort of honing in on like a microcosm of life, basically, that isn't necessarily high stakes on a grand scale, although the Spotlight definitely was. And
the Visitor, the only one you're really missing is the Visitor. He's only made, that's the only, because let's not count the Cobbler. Let's just.
You don't want to count the Cobbler? I don't know. I'm kind of curious about the Cobbler now, just in general, after seeing it.
I'm curious too. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But discounting the Cobbler, all you're really missing is the Visitor. So, okay. And I think that would probably be closer to Spotlight in terms of tone. But go ahead.
That's interesting. I think that he really knows how to deal with what are basically small-scale situations in a way that is both, he can see the humanist side of them. That means bringing comedic elements to that. That means bringing some emotional qualities to that. That means bringing some of the dark side of that. That's where Giamatti comes in on this one. But I think that's part of his charm in these movies, is that they're kind of all around in a way that seems okay. And it's a way that seems like, digestible, and also not necessarily. It's not that they don't challenge you, because I think they leave you thinking about the characters afterwards. But they're not about big moments. They're about small moments that become big, which is different. It's a different way.
Which is exactly my kind of movie, and it's very in line with the kind of films that I make, except not as funny. I don't think my films are as funny as this. Do you feel like, and I'm not saying I do, but based on what you guys are saying, do you feel like the lightness and tone detracts from the seriousness, the potential seriousness of the situations?
I think that you need the relief, and I think that it's.
And I stated that I felt they did not feel disingenuous. Does anyone disagree with the remark?
No.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think that that's all part of life.
Yeah, and the other, like you just alluded to Tom McCarthy, like what he's bringing to the table, and like one of the things that we always talk about, I feel like we talk about a lot. I can't remember if I talk about it here or in my class screening, but in terms of the director, tone comes up a lot. Have I said that on the show, guys? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
You know, the chief jobs of a director is controlling the tone, because with all the elements, the director is the one that's has the overarching vision. With all the different departments doing all their different things. And this is a hard tone to pull off because it does walk the line. That's for something that is just a drama or just an action movie, like tone is what it is. No one's giving Robert Schwenke like a lot of thumbs up for the tone of Allegiant. This is a high wire balancing act that seems easier than it is. And one of the things that he does that I wanted to talk about was his camera work, which, when we talked about Spotlight during our top 10 countdown, Davey sort of suggested that it wasn't like a real movie at all. We had this argument. And Win-Win had something similar in the sense of the camera is, I think, purposefully unobtrusive. And to the sense that it makes you feel like he's not putting a lot of thought into it, which I disagree with. I think that there's a lot going on there. Do you guys have any particular thoughts about the camera work, or was it so unobtrusive you didn't really notice?
I'm thinking back on this now. I think unobtrusive is a really good way of describing it. I think that, he's really concerned with making sure that you're never aware that you are being distracted by something fancy or by something that seems disingenuous, again, to the ideas and the lifestyles of these characters. There's nothing flashy about a Tom McCarthy movie, right? I think we can all agree about that.
So far, yeah.
Yeah.
It's focused on story, which is something I really believe in, and every shot choice, relates to that. Every shot choice is about what's going on in the narrative without, showing off the director's hand, and that's, Davy Joe had Hateful Eight in his top 10, and that's something that I always think about. For better or worse, he's always the example I use of someone that is frequently, you're constantly aware of Tarantino's presence. When you're watching a Tarantino movie.
Absolutely.
And I don't always think that's a good thing.
No, Tarantino is as much about the idea of filmmaking as it is about a story. Whereas I think this is a story in and of itself. And
correct. The other great choice, I think, from a directorial point of view is, obviously he's not the composer, but he makes the buck stops with him in terms of where and when to use the music and the tone of the music. I thought the music was slight but strong, in the sense, really strong choice. It was not swelling, it was not over the top, but it felt right for this piece. I noticed this being a second or third viewing, and I was thinking about it, and I just felt like it really worked, and it wasn't something that I would hum on at the gym or anything, but it felt like it really worked. And I forget the composer's name off the top of my head, but did you guys feel anything as relates to music?
Yeah,
I cannot recall a single lick of music in this movie. All
right, let's move on then. Just take it from me, audience, that it's not that bad, the music. It's good, and it works for this movie. And the other thing that always gets lauded about Tom McCarthy movies are the performances. Everyone is done, except for the cobbler. And this film is mostly no exception. I would argue that Spotlight was pitch perfect. We talked about during the top 10, which you can find on YouTube somewhere. No Names to Cinema Society top 10. Here I feel like there were some uneven performances, which I can get to, and that that's what sort of separates it from Spotlight. And there were some pitch perfect performances too, and so that's a minor flaw that I have with the film. Let's see how you guys feel. What did you guys feel about performances overall, and what stood out to you, either good or bad?
I'll jump in. I guess I didn't feel like there was a lot of the main players. I didn't have any issues with the performances. I guess I didn't pick up any kind of inconsistencies like you're referring to. I think that some of the side player stuff, like Bobby Cannavale and Jeffrey Tambor's characters, got a little too hammy for me in terms of how they interacted with the rest of the film. But that's just about the comedic elements. I don't necessarily think that that's the worst part of what was going on.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you. That is one that I had in mind. Like, I think Paul Giamatti and Amy Ryan are perfect. Like, Amy Ryan is one of the most underrated actors ever. I mean, she's so good. She does have one Oscar nomination for a transcendent performance in Gone Baby Gone. Should have won easily. But I mean, not that Tilda Swinton was bad and Michael Clayton, but still, Amy Ryan. Yeah, I mean, like, there are moments when Bobby Cannavale, I mean, like, is perfect, and he's a great, great actor, don't get me wrong. But there's a moment when I feel like he starts to be a little over the top and doesn't fit in the movie as much as well as some of the others.
Yeah.
Davey Joe, where do you stand on these?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And I thought maybe some of Jeffrey Tambor's comedy was maybe a little out of place. Not necessarily that he was doing a bad job. It just kind of...
Right.
I mean, like, I only had issue with Jeffrey Tambor when he got involved with Bobby Cannavale, and I sort of put that on the adding Cannavale's situation, because I feel like that was kind of forced in a way. It was funny, but like, his involvement with the wrestling team was like, really? But what? And then also, clown? What's that?
Did we really need a sad clown? I mean, it's kind of, he did a very good job of it.
I mean, yeah, well, I don't put that on Tambor, though. You know what I mean, necessarily?
Totally agree
I mean, like, in comparison to what Cannavale was doing, I feel like Tambor was underplaying it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
One issue, the performance, and I mean, like, when we did We Are Your Friends, he was the one that I singled out as being the best of the young actors in We Are Your Friends, and obviously he looks totally different now. But Alex Schaefer, he's really good for the first three quarters, but when he's tested, when he's pushed to get emotional, I feel like he missed it. I feel like he wasn't at a place as an actor where he could really get it. Like, when he's like, there's certain scenes where he's like needs to be emotional and really, let it out, and he didn't have the tools. I almost felt like he did not have the tools to get there, and he sort of missed it. What's that?
That's interesting. I mean, I think one of the reasons I was drawn to his performance in general is because he, as a character, was so understated, and he seemed to be in control all the time, one way or the other, which is not what I would have expected for them to have played the teenage role in this situation. I really appreciated the fact that he ended up being not a train wreck, which is kind of what I would expect.
I completely agree with that concept in terms of the characterization.
Yeah.
And I really liked how, quote unquote mellow he was through the first three quarters of the film.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but I mean, it was the same thing. You know what I mean? He wasn't doing that much different from scene to scene until he had to do something different that it felt like there's a scene wherein he has to get physical with his mother. And as an actor, I didn't buy it. I mean, I'm not the actor. I'm saying, I did not buy his performance at that moment. I didn't buy him getting there. Like, I knew he actually did it, but it did not feel like it came from a real place at that moment.
You know what? Now that you've pointed that out, yeah, I absolutely agree. It felt really awkward. It felt like that was something that he wasn't really comfortable doing at the time, one way or the other. So.
Yeah. I mean, like, based on We Are Your Friends, which came out 4 years later. And did you guys recognize him or no, or did you look it up or?
No,
nope.
I didn't put it together to you right now.
Do you remember him in We Are Your Friends?
Never noticed.
Yep.
He's Squirrel.
Yep.
I might have actually pulled a photo of We Are Your Friends. Did I?
I remember. Yeah, I was thinking it's some rodent name.
Yeah, well then you got it. So yeah, he was Squirrel, and he was the one that I singled out in that movie. So we're out of time again, but I wanted to give Davey Joe the opportunity to talk about the legal issues. So I guess the first question is, Davey Joe, I don't have any pictures of a trial situation, so you're just gonna have to deal with this photo. But is there a situation where, first of all, were the legal issues? Did they cut any corners, or did they make sense? Were they honest? You know, because there's a lot of he's a lawyer, and there's a lot of legal stuff going on here.
Yeah, it's a good question. All I can say is that the thing that I know for a fact is that if you lie in court to a judge to put money into your pocket, you're done. And I think that the opposing attorney has a duty to report that. I don't think you can just kind of sweep it under the rug with some kind of deal where you decide to pay off the other lawyer's client. I think that's a problem.
Well, I mean, did that seem implausible? Because I understand that they had an obligation, but I mean, you talk about Margot Martindale's character, but I mean, like, isn't the concept being like that stuff does happen, doesn't it?
Well, maybe, I don't know. That's a good point. Does that kind of thing happen? It might. But she would be if it somehow got out that she knew about it, that would not be good. I think that it's a problem. The whole movie was kind of gnawing at me. Like, I don't know how he's gonna get away with this, or
because he did it. He committed a crime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the movie takes it lightly, is what you're saying.
Well, he got away with it. I don't know.
Did you root for him to get away with it, or as a lawyer you felt you couldn't root for him?
See, that's the great thing about the movie is you are so sympathetic with him, you kind of do want him to get out of it.
I mean, I know I do, but I mean, I'm curious about your perspective as a lawyer.
I did too. But if I were in her position, I think I probably would have turned him in.
I'm amazed that we have all these viewers right now, in spite of being half hour late and all of the issues that we've been having. So, but anyway, do you guys? We're late, but I mean, like, I really want to know because I have one. Do you guys have a favorite moment from this movie?
Well, you guys go first. I'm thinking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a photo for it yet. Damn it, guys. My favorite. You guys got nothing?
Pancakes.
I need you to vamp. This is where I need you to vamp.
Pancakes.
I was literally going to use the time.
I liked it when he sat down and they're kind of like forgiving each other and he just hands him the syrup. I don't know why that sticks in my head.
You like the very end?
But it was a really good scene, and
okay.
It was kind of
that's
how men apologize. Like, that's how we get over things. Like, there's no talking.
That's not how J Money and I apologize.
No, I know. I'm trying to teach you guys.
You're trying to teach us how not to communicate. Not communicating is the best way.
Like men. Damn it.
So anything, J Money? I'm ready with a photo if you want me to stop.
All right. Let me circle back to why I said I like this movie and I stumbled a bit. It's because ultimately there was not a lot from this movie that I ended up taking away. This is a movie that's full of wonderful nuance, and I really appreciate what Tom McCarthy does, but it's also not the kind of movie that ultimately sticks with me. And that's why, I'm not going to rave about it. I'll say it was competent and it was enjoyable and it's a good movie, but it's also not the kind of movie I'm going to think a lot about when I'm done watching it. And that's probably part of why I'm struggling to come up with an example right now for you.
That's fine, and it did make my top 10 of that year, but in the 7 or 8 range. And I don't disagree with anything that you said. I mean, I do think that it's slight to some degree, but I just feel real happy and enjoyable, and I really like seeing movies about three-dimensional people. My favorite scene is there's a scene when Amy Ryan, they're arguing with the kid Kyle, and she tells him that they love him, and it's a simple moment, but it's really earned. And the words are thrown out a lot in the words "I love you," and in this movie, at that moment, I found it to be particularly poignant. And their family dynamic here. I mean, Amy Ryan and Paul Giamatti are a perfect match for each other as actors, and they look right together. It was really great. So I am the biggest fan of this movie. It sounds like I can't tell who's in second place, J Money or Davy Joe. I think J Money's in second and Davy Joe's in third.
I mean, it's the most relevant to Davy Joe.
I mean, I
know,
really.
no, maybe why he liked it the least, which is not to say he didn't like it.
I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah, no, I get that impression, but I feel it seems that I like it the most, which is
Okay.
not the point. We're gonna move on. Our next indie, which is gonna be on April 18th, hopefully at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, is our next indie is features a Canadian director who guides a British actor and an American actor in a movie about a relationship between a famous Swiss dude and a famous Austrian. So that is our next indie.
Swiss dude.
Figure that one out.
Yeah.
What's that, J Money?
Famous Swiss dude. Take your pick.
Exactly. There's only a handful. Next up is our classic movie of the evening, thank God, in which we're going to talk about a Western, The Missouri Breaks from 1976, a very little-known Western, so that'll be kind of fun to break down. You can see the image behind me here. And that is coming up. And also in the next segment, I am going to do my top 5 as a part of the classic, and it's going to be my top 5 Brando films of all time. So tune in for that. That's going to be, looks like it's going to be around 6:45 Pacific, 9:45 Eastern. So look for it around then. Links coming. Check on Facebook or Twitter. See you shortly.